This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Grief BeLIEF. And we want to welcome all of you that are joining us today. And we've been going around in order, alphabetical order. And today, Carol is going to be leading our conversation. And it's not just up to Carol, it's up to all of us. And those of you listening who may want to send us messages and questions. So, Carol, take it away.
I will take it away. Hi, ladies. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'd like to get into some of our thoughts and share what we did that was positive and what wasn't positive as we go along, as we continue this podcast addressing how to handle bereavement during the holidays. And as we get started, I'd like to open with my edited version of the lyrics from the Maroon 5 Memories. Here's to the ones we've got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. Because the drinks bring back all the memories of everything we've been through. Toast to the ones here today. Toast to the ones that we've lost along the way. Because the drinks bring back the memories, and the memories bring back, and the memories bring back you. There's a time that I remember when I didn't know of pain, when I believed in forever, and everything would stay the same. Now my heart feels like December when somebody says your name, because I can't reach out and tell you, but I know I will one day. Here's to the ones we've got. Cheers to the wish you were here, but you're not. That resonates with me this time of the year, throughout the year, but in particular because it mentions December and the harshness of December. And just as a side note, do any of you know where the word December comes from, the derivative of December?
No.
You're going to be surprised. If you think about it, it's going to make some sense. It stands for the number 10. It was the 10th month of the year, the final month of the year, but the calendar started in March. And when they added in 2 more months, they put in February and March, which threw up September, October, November, December. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And everything that we do, there is a reason, there is a season. And December, in our mind, equates to winter, which is fear, which is cold, which is hibernation, a lot of time death because of disease. Think of all the people that are ill right now, or people that you know that have COVID or have the virus or the flu that's going on. It's a very, very difficult month, but it's also a month of joy. It's a month of rebirth. It's a month of welcoming into the new year and the spring to be. So how do you balance the pain that you feel with the joy that you're celebrating or supposed to be celebrating? And so I'd like to ask you all what you did this Thanksgiving to help you get through it. Anyone want to offer their thoughts? All right, I will share a couple of my clients' thoughts that they had with me. Because we're talking about this. What are you going to do to help you through this holiday, especially when everyone is so dispersed? And one of them said, we set a specific time. And one of them said that was on Thanksgiving. The other one said that they did it on Christmas Eve, and we'll do it on Christmas Eve, or they'll do it on Christmas Day. And one of them is that they go outside and they ring a bell. They just ring a bell, and they know that everyone, no matter what time zone they're in, are out there ringing that bell together and thinking of one another and thinking of those that are in their lives and what it means to them. Another one said that they play certain music and they just dance to the music on their own. They just, before they even go out that evening or with family or with friends, or if they're going to be alone, they will have that music there and they will just dance to that music. So I thought those were 2 great suggestions that people do. And I wanted to share them with you in hopes that you can think of something that was special to you this Thanksgiving now that I've opened the door a little bit. Hopefully you can think of something that was special for you.
Yeah. So I guess what I did was I went to a party after Thanksgiving, but a little after Thanksgiving, I went to a party and I really wasn't sure how I was going to be. So I posted on Facebook because a lot of the people going to the party were on Facebook. And I said, I'm going to come early. I'll stay as long as I can, and I'll leave when I need to, because my capacity for people is not very big. And I got so much support for giving myself the grace to be however I was in that moment. And that was a very cool thing. I was talking to a client about asking. She doesn't like to ask. And it's winter. And on the East Coast, she got 2 feet of snow. And her husband used to plow and used to do all that. And she didn't want to ask. And so we had a conversation about, how do you understand that thank you puts everything in balance? That people really, really, really want to be there for you. And it doesn't have to be equal. Because when we're grieving, what I found, what my clients find, is you want to keep things even. But if your capacity is not that big, you need to be receiving more than giving in this moment. It'll come back to level. And this is what we worry about, imposing.
Good point. We need to be able to ask for that. I know that I've mentioned in the past, when my husband first passed away, many people were saying, come on, we'll take you out to dinner. Come on, it's time you get out. Come on, let's go do this, let's go do that. And I would, thank you. I'm not ready, and I hope you will be there when I'm ready. And I think that's very much to that point, that we need to be able to reach out to those. I was talking to a client today who said she ran into a friend that she hadn't seen in a while, and they asked her how she was. And she said she told them the truth. She said she told them she's miserable, she's hurting. And her friend took a deep breath and said, thank you for being honest. I don't know that anyone has ever responded honestly to me. And so let's talk about that a little bit, the importance of letting people know how you feel. Some people are going to be put off by it. Some people won't know how to handle it. But if we don't communicate, what are we doing to ourselves? And what are we doing to the rest of those as they go on and one day will be in the same situation, will not know how to deal with it? So I will preface it by saying, I feel that it's our responsibility to be honest and let others know how we're feeling. You can do it in a gentle, communicative way, but it's up to us to educate the community and to let them know how we're feeling, so they can in turn respond and be there for us.
Yeah, and what I like about the way Alison phrased it, a couple of things occurred to me. One, she's stating it not as a demand, but just stating it as fact. And so she's setting some boundaries on it. And at a time when we can feel our most vulnerable and out of control, it's a way of kind of asserting a little sense of, oh, I don't know what, I don't want to say control, but not being out of control. Let's put it that way. And it's consistent with what you're saying, Carol, that we can ask, but not from a place of being needy, just as a matter of fact, and being honest about it, being authentic about it.
I think too that this is really good to think about ahead of time. A lot of times us not asking, we're kind of holding out on, or holding something back from other people. I mean, people really do want to help. And I think we only think about that wanting to be even thing when we're the one asking for help. If we're the one offering help, we're not sitting there thinking, well, now they owe me. You know, we want typically we want to give and give and give. So I think we only tend to do that when we're the one asking for help. And if we don't accept help from other people, we're actually robbing the other person of, being able to help us. And that gives us a sense of joy and just meaning and purpose. And it's actually helps everybody when you're asking for help. So I think that's something to really think about. Anybody needs to think about this, not just people who are grieving. Like it's an important thing to be able to ask for help.
It is an important thing, absolutely true, to be able to ask for help. And again, once that initial period is over, most of the people are going back to their own lives. They have their own families, they have their own activities and what everything else is going on. You, the one that is grieving, is only moving as quickly as your body is allowing you to at that moment in time. So you don't have, okay, now it's been a month, I'm ready to go back to work and be with my friends and everything's just, I'm back to normal. You're not. And so the people that aren't grieving or aren't grieving at the level that you are, because they may be, but they've gone back to their lives, to their families, to their children, to their activities, to their partners, they don't know to ask what they can do for you at that point in time. And then it becomes incumbent upon us, the ones that is grieving, to be able to be free enough and comfortable enough to ask for that. Again, there is no time limit, and we're sitting there waiting for people, but so-and-so hasn't called me, or so-and-so didn't reach out to me. They don't know to. And so we can't impose that upon them, not knowing where we are in our bereavement and what our needs are. And I think that plays right into the holidays. There are so many people that, what are you going to be doing? What were you doing in the past? And do you have plans? What are those plans? What if those plans fall through? What are you going to do for yourself to help yourself through this? And I'd love to open that up to you to see what your plans are for this holiday coming up. And we're in the midst of Hanukkah. I love that Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa are all intertwined this year. I'd like to know what some of the activities are that you have planned to help you through this.
Yeah,
Go
we've
ahead.
changed our holiday, obviously, like 180 degrees this year. At first, I didn't think Alex was going to come home for the holidays. He's going to be home for about 4 or 5 days. In the past, it was all about him, our only child in the house, even though he was a young adult. But this year, coming home, we're just doing different activities. And he's the one who brought it up. We got tickets to go see Hamilton. There's a record store in Cleveland that's going out of business. He wants to go one day with his dad because he knows it would be something that his dad would like. So every day there's something planned, but it's not even a big plan other than going to see Hamilton. And it's not about gift giving. It's about spending time with each other. And we've been listening to each other for the last 2 weeks. What is it that we all need? And I think it's coming together. And, we've also given ourselves the permission. If we don't want to do something, we don't have to. And specifically for my husband, who is totally wiped out from treatment, it's been hard for me to give him permission. But, finally I've looked at it and said, hey, I'm not happy when he's not happy. So, let's do this for each other. So it's not going to look like Hanukkah, really. It's not going to look like Christmas. It's just going to look like a family just spending time together.
Mindfully.
That's wonderful.
Allison, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we lost your sound, Allison.
Carol, we lost your sound.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's so beautiful and so rich to realize kind of what is the essence of what you need. By creating a framework where I could leave when I needed to at that party, at the point where I hit the wall, and I literally went almost into panic after 90 minutes. I mean, really freaking out about all the people and all the interactions, and I just was overwhelmed. But because I had given that context, I said, I'm so glad to see you, and I just hit my wall. And so I could leave without offending anybody, because it was just clear what was going on. December is endings and beginnings. Tomorrow would have been my husband's birthday. Would have been 64. It'll be his 7th birthday without him. I may be a wreck. And so one of the things that my boyfriend and I have been doing is we've been looking through our clothes. We both gained weight over the pandemic, and we've been letting go of the things that are no longer us. Not from the perspective of weight, but from the perspective of how we feel inside.
To explain more. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if we looked at our closets and said, okay, we are going to get rid of everything we don't fit in right now, we would have like 3 items at this point. But there's the person that I was before my loss and the person I am now. And the clothes that fit who I was, some of them no longer fit who I am. I wouldn't wear those colors again. I wouldn't wear that style again. I don't feel that way anymore. And so being willing to let go of those things as a way to create a little doorway in January into a new becoming. Because it's all baby steps. We've talked about this a lot.
But that's absolutely a beautiful way to express it and to go about it. I could agree with you on everything that you've done, except for I'm not ready to get rid of some of the things that I will never wear again, but because of the memories they hold with Ron. So I hold on to them, and they're in the back of my closet. I don't have to see them. I don't have to wear them, but I know that they're there. I know that they're there.
Perfect.
And what I'm finding in both listening to you and Karen, the common thread is the communication, the ability to communicate. Now, I can tell you unequivocally, without a doubt, I couldn't communicate that first year. I was in frog brain. I couldn't remember my name. I couldn't remember the step I took. I couldn't remember what I ate 1 second ago. I couldn't remember if I even sat down at the dinner table. And so it's the spectrum of how we feel and how we react during this period of time can't be measured from person to person. We can say that most people will go through these stages and these steps, but there is no time limit on it or a time frame on it. And so what I'm impressing upon all of you, no matter what stage you are, that when you are able to communicate, it will be a wonderful coping tool for you. And just like Alison and Karen are doing for the holidays, they've communicated. We've talked in the past, some of the things others have done to communicate their needs or their boundaries or their concerns or their feels moving forward. Communication is important. And so how do you get from that fog brain, I feel like a frog half the time, fog brain, into communicating? And can any of you think of a period when you did transition out of it, or how it felt once you started transitioning.
Hmm.
I remember that looking back, I realized I had no idea how foggy I was. You know, I knew I was foggy. I wasn't the old me, but I didn't realize the depth of that until the fog kind of dissipated. And it's kind of like a fog in the morning when the earth is warm and I guess the earth is warm and then the cool clouds come in. And they just dissipate very subtly, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I can see more than a few feet. That's exactly how I felt in that first year, maybe even 2 years, lessening each year. And on one level, it was frightening to realize how foggy I had been. I had been driving machinery and things like that, and you know, it was a lot of it was kind of unconscious, automatic. So all of that's normal. You know, for some people it's frightening, but you know, it's just part of the assault on the body and the mind and the heart that we work through, each one in our own way.
There's an article written that I found by a neurologist, Lisa Schulman, that I found very interesting. And just a little bit about it is grief is a normal protective process. The process is an evolutionary adaptation to promote survival in the face of emotional trauma. Changes in brain function go largely undetected when an individual continues functioning normally. But those experiences still affect how the brain works. Over the long time, grief can disrupt the diverse cognitive domains of memory, decision-making, visuospatial function, attention, word fluency, and the speed of information processing. But the effects of long-term chronic stress are reversible. I know we touched upon this the last time we were talking a little bit, because a lot of the family members start thinking, oh my goodness, they're very ill, they're showing signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. And no, it's the body protecting itself. You have been through a trauma. And your body needs time to heal. The brain needs time to heal. Your emotions need time to heal. Do you ever 100% heal? No, I don't believe that you do. I believe that you will be able to cope with it. And you learn how to cope with it, because that pain will always be within you somewhere. That person is always a part of you. That loss is always a part of you. But you learn how to live with it and to cope with it on a day-to-day basis. So in continuing, Candace just explained how she went through it. Can either of you explain some of what you experienced?
Mine was my losses that brought me to the point of becoming a grief coach were very close together, and they were 3 core people in my life. And 2 were deaths and 1 was estrangement. And that, I mean, honestly, the first death happened in November of 2018. The last death happened in January of 2020. And in between was an estrangement. And then COVID hit. And then I lost my business that I built for 10 years. And then I lost a good friend, and then I lost a cat. That all happened in 18 months. So for me, that brain fog lasted until just about last year. I was still struggling so hard with it. And I didn't know what it was until I became a grief coach, until I, went through training and realized, oh, that's what's been going on. And last month, I talked about how I had actually gone to classes on early dementia, 3 of them, thinking that I was going through early dementia. That's how severe it was. And I think it's so important for people to understand that it is just normal, and it did go away. It did finally, I was like, oh my gosh, I actually remember words now, and I can remember things. But now I'm in it again. I then, lost, our dog who was a very big part of our lives. And, just this past, couple weeks, the person that I am estranged from I actually saw for the very first time in almost 3 years. And that sent me into such incredible grief fog. Days before I knew I was going to see this estranged family member, I knew I was going to see them. And it was for days beforehand, I could not put sentences together. I mean, it wasn't a word. I couldn't express an entire sentence. I knew that I had something to say and I couldn't say it. And it was so intense. And since then, it's not as bad. I'm able to put sentences together. I'm still having trouble with individual words, but yeah, it's brain fog is a grief fog, whatever you want to call it, it's a real thing, and it can be very, very intense and important to understand that it doesn't mean that there's something necessarily, you might not be going through dementia, hopefully not, but it is something that your brain does. So that's been my experience. I'm still in the midst of it.
There are some things that you can do to help you through it. And part of them is the mindfulness, the relaxation, the practicing journaling and counseling and meditation. A lot of the things, even this podcast is something for people to listen to and to understand it and to grasp what's going on. But it's also important that when you are in that mode, that brain fog mode, that you do eat well and you get your berries and your kale and even, red wine. They're recommending red wine and dark chocolate because of the, how the body likes that. But listening to music, finding a way to relax, finding something that gets you out of just being in a daze, and exercising, the memory games, the word puzzles, focusing on other things, because the more we get into our head, the more trouble we get into that brain fog and the anxiety. And so it's just trying to take that step back and giving yourself permission to relax. And it does continue on. It will veer. It's not every now and then. We'll go into it just like you are right now from another experience, and knowing that there's going to be a stressful situation that you're going to be encountering.
Meditation, I was going to say meditation for me has been hugely helpful. There was a point at which the day after we had to have our dog put down, I didn't know what to do. I was just I felt like I was frozen. I couldn't figure out what to do. My brain would not stop going and going. And I was like, I had stuff I had to do. I had things I had to get done, and I couldn't focus. And I just went and did 10-minute, 12-minute meditation. And I was like, oh, I know what I have to do. It just switched my brain, and I was able to go and function.
There's also a really easy breathing exercise, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we went through this in one of our earlier podcasts, of just taking that deep breath in for the count, slowly for the count of 5, holding it for the count of 5, and then slowly releasing it for the count of 5. You do it anywhere, any place, anytime, and it just helps relax the brain just for the moment. But you can do it for 20 minutes at a time if you need to, or if you're walking into a situation that you're not comfortable in, take a couple minutes and do some breathing exercises. And it may be something that will help you through the holidays. Do some breathing exercises, because it happens to all of us. Absolutely happens to all of us. Have we talked about what we're going to be doing for this holiday that's coming up?
As little as possible.
Okay. Okay. And that's a conscious choice, right?
Yeah. I mean, can I jump in on this point that we've been talking about for just a moment? Everything
Absolutely.
you said is awesome. There's one other piece that I wanted to bring up, which is that time is kind of a human bound thing. We should be getting through this at this speed. Why aren't you over it? Which adds stress, right? Grief brain for me, it broke my memory. It broke my productivity. It broke my ability to reach out to people. I mean, I was completely not functional, and it was terrifying. And so time is painful. And I think one of the reasons in this season that it's so hard is like there's Dave's birthday and there's Christmas and there's New Year's, and those are time, and those are markers in time which show going on without that person, going on without. Nature has its own rhythm. And one of the reasons, and this is something that wasn't mentioned yet, so I wanted to bring it up. So it has its own timing and its own rhythm. And that's one of the things that makes being out in nature, going for a walk, hugging a tree, breathing in nature, because what you're doing is you're connecting into the earth, or listening to the sea, or listening to leaves. And it puts you solidly back into your body. Because I don't know about you guys, but I was always trying to leap out of my body and stop being in so much pain.
Exactly.
And the brain fog, the grief brain, was part of that escape. Let me get out because it hurts in here. So for Christmas, it's going to really be a, what do I want to do now? And
So
what
not-
do I
not
want to do
forced-
now?
Not forced planning.
Yep.
That's how I
Um,
do all the holidays, actually.
I was just gonna say, for me, it's a little bit different. You know, all of our kids will be here, so that's and all of their significant others. My mother-in-law will be here, and so it will be. It's just very busy, and I look forward to that. It's nice to just. I mean, even though my kids are basically all grown, it's still experiencing the holidays through their eyes. I still do that. It's still a real thing, even at this age. So I actually really look forward to it. It's just very distracting. And that's how Thanksgiving was too. They were all here. So it was just nice to just be together. And you know, they've walked through this whole journey with me. They know how hard it's been, and it's been hard for them. So we kind of are all grievers in different, at different stages. And so there's nothing that you could or couldn't do that would be offensive or upsetting to any of them. So it's just a safe place always. The one thing I will say I did do before Thanksgiving, my one daughter has a dog, and the dog always comes with her for these events. And so I made sure to practice that before she came on Thanksgiving. So we did a trial run and had Kenny dog come over beforehand, because I was afraid I would just like lose it and, just sob and sob and sob. But it was fine. It was fine. And it was really good to see Kenny dog. I hadn't seen her in a while. So, and she came on Thanksgiving, and it was totally fine. So, but that was something I intentionally did ahead of time, knowing that that could be something that would have a strong impact on me. So it's one thing I did for Thanksgiving. Something else I do every Christmas that has been really helpful to me. And it's just one of those little things that I don't know why I thought of it, but I did. And it's just a little thing that's helpful, and it's just for me. And so it's going to make me cry, but my mom died in November. She was my best friend. November 18. And so that Christmas, my first Christmas without her, I decided that every year at Christmas time, my mom was known as the cat lady. She loved cats. She had cat everything. I mean, you would never see her without cats on her body. There were cats everywhere. So every year I buy a stuffed animal cat every Christmas. And so all of those stuffed animal cats are underneath my Christmas tree. So that's something I do every year for me. That is just special for me and my mom. And I actually do. I'm kind of like, Mom, which cat should we get this year? I mean, I just ask her, lead me to the cat that we should get this year.
Aw.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, truly, truly.
And I think somebody asked that question. I still speak to him or her. Is that normal? And so I think that addresses it in some ways.
Will we ever stop?
No.
I can't imagine stopping talking to them ever. I had one client ask me if I still wore my wedding band, and I don't have it on right when I walk in the house. A lot of times I take off my jewelry, and I took it off, but I do. I still wear my wedding band, and I'm in a relationship. But I still wear I love knowing that when I walk out the door, that Ron is still with me. It just, but again, there's not a right or wrong to it. If you're comfortable taking it off, that person is still within you.
Right.
It's whatever feels right to you. Absolutely what feels right to you. So but never stop talking to them. Why?
Right.
That's
Or
what
try to
memories
stop
are.
talking to them.
That's life after death is keeping their memory alive.
Mhm.
And there's that saying, may their memory be a blessing. And by their memory being a blessing, you're sharing stories, you're talking to them, you're talking about them. They're not gone, they're not forgotten. So yeah, talk, journal, sing, be with them.
The difficult thing for me right now, I'm grieving for the loss of my brother-in-law, and my family doesn't understand it. And they don't understand it because he was my brother-in-law. We were estranged, and, why would I feel? But I sat my husband down yesterday and I said, we had some good times together. And I didn't do anything specifically to him, nor did he do anything specifically to me to end the relationship. Nobody ever said it was over. It just sort of happened. And I cared about him. And I'm sad that we didn't have a relationship up at the end. And today when I saw his obituary, it was too real. And yet, my husband isn't expressing his feelings, and that's okay. That's something that you've all taught me, that he's doing what he has to do. But I want him to understand that I'm doing what I have to do. And I am going to talk about my brother-in-law, and I'm going to remember the day that he picked me up from the airport and was speeding, and he was drunk as a skunk, and I was scared out of my mind. And then when we got home, he just put his arms around me and said, I'm sorry, but did you have a good time? The answer was no, I did not have a good time, but I'll remember that. Okay. He got me home safe, and that's all that matters right now. But we don't have to be married to the person, but they don't have to be our significant other. They can be a distant friend or family member, and grief is grief.
Yeah, and it's the shared history that is part of the loss as well, that, the memories, and, regardless of what the memories were, as, in depth or not in depth as they may be. My older sister divorced her husband within the last few years. They were married for a long, long time. And they met when I was in middle school. So he's been in my consciousness on some levels, not on a daily basis because they lived in a different state. And he was always a type A cubed personality. So it wasn't like he was the most, cuddly guy in the world. He was a very competent guy, fighter pilot. But I was able to acknowledge that I was grieving that loss, even though it wasn't my loss in a literal sense. But it was because, I've known him for many, many, many years and many holidays together, not every single one. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's that mixed bag of feelings we have when there's that change in something that's familiar to us.
Even this past week, Twitch, who took his life, that I've had a lot of people, reach out to me about that and wondering why they're feeling so intensely about it. And there could be a lot of different reasons, but I think that a lot of times we don't realize that we're carrying unresolved grief ourselves. And so when someone that we don't know real well dies like that, you can bring that unresolved grief right to the forefront. It just brings it right up, and you're feeling all these emotions that are actually from past losses you've had. So it's not unusual to have that happen as well. So, and honestly, just loss of any life is worth grieving. I mean, it's a human life. It's loss. It's sad. It's just sad no matter what. So it's just something, I don't know if any of you have had people reach out to you about Twitch passing. Have any of you
Not
had
that
any?
specific person, but I know in other instances of, taking their own life type of thing, even though the people didn't know the individual, that they weren't involved, it's still a shock to us, I think, as a culture, to know that somebody would be that desperate and not feel able to ask for help.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
One of the things the grief recovery method talks about is that grief is experienced at 100%. So no matter what the loss is, it's the grief, everybody feels grief at 100%. There are no 50% grievers. And the difference is the time and intensity of the relationship. That's where the difference comes in. And I think that's kind of a good way to look at it too.
And I think the other part, Kristy, that we had in our training is that we have different ways of coping with it, and they call them short-term energy releasing behaviors. And so some people are a little better at seemingly hiding it, but they're just stuffing it. It's kind of like energy. It doesn't go away. It just shows up in a different form.
Yes. Shuffled around.
and I think that this kind of brings us to, I was talking to a friend after a friend of his died of suicide, and he immediately called up his son. He was grieving because the people around that person, his friend who died, he was like, could they have done more? Could I have done more? I had a friend whose wife had mental health issues, and she was worried about her in a car, and she called the police because she was concerned about her wife. And there was a shooting, and her wife died. And so just very complicated, maybe some blame, maybe certainly some grief. But when these things happen, I had a friend who grew up in one of the places where there was a mass shooting. And she had this memory of this place where she grew up as a child as being this idyllic place. She was grieving that experience that doesn't exist anymore, grieving those people. She didn't know any of them. But as humans, we're so connected to each other, and we forget. We silo and we go along in our lives and our work and but in fact, we are integrally connected. So a suicide, a shooting, these events that happen affect us, and we grieve even if we don't know the person.
Very true. And to that point, a lot of times the grief we are feeling is for the others. And I think, and bringing this back full circle, how do we communicate with those that have lost others in these horrific situations, whether it is via suicide? And I think that's a whole podcast in and of itself at some point in time. Or was it due to a shooting, or was it a loss, like many of us have experienced? How do we communicate with them, especially during the holidays, to let them know we are here for you? We feel the pain with you. We are grieving our own grief and our own losses, but you have touched our soul too. And maybe that's what we start doing going forward on the holidays, that we take that time to be thankful for all that we have and remember all that we have lost, no matter what the circumstances are, that we care about one another. And maybe we need to reach out and hold hands, or maybe we all need to go out and ring that bell, or maybe we all need to take that moment in time at the dinner table or in the afternoon to have that moment of silence and to share our grief with everyone and let everyone know that we are there together. Thoughts on that?
I just put up a Facebook post. I am the primary caregiver for my mother-in-law, my late husband's mom, who's 99 and lives a block away from me. And she said to me this one time, "Nobody touches me." And so now every time I leave, and I was, sometimes giving her a kiss when I left, sometimes not. So every time I leave, I kiss her on the forehead and both cheeks. Because it occurred to me that grieving people, old people, ill people, prickly people, they're not as easy to touch and talk to as kittens and babies. But it matters. And so another time she's like, "Would you rub my back?" And so I rubbed her back. She's like, "Okay, that's enough." And I stopped. And she goes, "A little more." And I rubbed her back. Okay. This went on for 10 minutes with her like taking in the love that she could receive in that moment, stopping when she needed me to stop, and then asking for more. And I think that that's really important. Grieving people can be prickly. They can be hungry to be touched and then need to stop. And so just to be sensitive to saying that's enough doesn't mean it's not appreciated. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It means I've taken in all I can take right now in this really vulnerable condition and place.
Yeah, and I think it also doesn't mean that I'm rejecting it going forward. It's just right now.
Yep.
That's a great point.
Based on the conversation that we're having here today, and I thank you all for it. I think it's been extremely helpful for me. I think it's been very beautiful how we've all interacted and communicated with one another. I know I, for one, am now I'm probably going to be spending Christmas, even Christmas Day alone, because my daughter-in-law will be with her family. My son will be working. My daughter will be with her boyfriend. I chose to leave state so I won't be near my friends. But I will find someone and ask them if I can give them a hug. And I'm going to make that a new resolution for myself on the holidays now, to ask someone if I can give them a hug. And maybe we start making a tradition of hugging. Take a moment to hug. Are you in with me on that one?
I love it. I love it.
Definitely.
We set a time that we'll do it?
There's as much for the giver as the person who receives it.
And I will tell you, there is something called a huggable.
Yes,
And my son gave me a huggable before he moved to Dallas. And the first thing he said to me when he handed it to me, "This is me. Anytime you want a hug." And, that's something that we need to think about for each other and for the people that we're going to be hugging. It doesn't have to be an actual huggable, but it could be a pillow. It can be a scarf. It can be anything that they then remember that this is touching you.
I
be
have
a
a,
phone call, it can be a text, it can be anything you want it to be, but that moment in time, that hug.
You got it.
Yes.
and be mindful of, so I've had 3 family members die in the last 2 weeks. Not super close family members, but 3. I have multiple friends who have cancer at the moment. And what I'm getting from them in that grief is I want to reach out. I'm not sure I'll have the energy to reach back. Keep reaching out and give me grace to wait until I'm ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Carol, this has been a magnificent coming together, and thank you for leading the group. I want our listeners to know that they can reach out to any of us or all of us. Please don't be alone on the holiday if you don't want to be. If you choose to be, we respect that 100%. But do what you think is important to you. And that can change moment to moment. And I heard that in your message, Alison, that you may feel like you want to be with somebody right now, and 2 minutes from now, that whole feeling has changed. And that's okay. I will see you
Close
all.
by asking you all if I can give you a hug for today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
See